One quote that I feel best represents this book is that survival is a constant fight between predator and prey, each battling for physical superiority. So The Wasp That Brainwashes the Caterpillar is a book that mainly revolves around the different adaptations that each of these creatures has undergone to ensure the survival of their species. So three of these great organisms are the pangolin, the cone snail, and the Glyphirmes fungus. So the pangolin is prey, and it's prey for lions. So the pangolin has in turn developed an adaptation to create these strong, thick scales made out of keratin. Keratin is the same material that is used in our fingernails and in our hair. So keratin is used to make these thick scales that absorb all the shock and all the force of the lion. So when they feel threatened, the pangolin will just curl up into a ball. And the lion will of course try bat at it, gnaw at it, but nothing can seem to break this pangolin's iron defense. The pangolin is about the size of your average house cat, and is kind of a cross between an anteater and a turtle due to the massive scales that it has all over its body. The pangolin is a very, very, very calm and quiet animal and likes to graze and eat grass in Central Africa. A predator that has developed an adaptation to help find prey is the giant cone-eating snail. The giant cone snail, what it does has a giant cone-shaped mouth, and it has developed an adaptation to shoot toxic plumes out of this mouth. So since the snail is slow, what it will do is slowly crawl up to the school of fish and then shoot out these toxic plumes. And these toxins put the fish into a drunken-like state where they are very disoriented and they can't see straight, so they'll float around. They may fall to the bottom of the seafloor where the fish will use its giant cone mouth to go onto the fish, and then it injects it with more poison and lethal poison. This poison kills the animal, and then it swallows it whole and digests it. So an example of an organism that is not a predator or prey is the Glyphirmes fungus. So this fungus has developed an adaptation to mind control animals. So what it does is it makes sure that the animal, or the ant in this case, is mind controlled. So once it is attached to it, it'll let the ant do its thing before mind controlling it to go to a certain location where it'll pop out and it'll blow up the ant's head, and the fungus and the spores will be released.
Everyone needs somewhere to live. Some organisms build houses, and others dig holes. However, some animals find more creative ways to get shelter. The tongue-eating isopod, for example, does exactly what you think. It eats a fish's tongue and takes its place, gaining shelter inside the poor creature's mouth. Unfortunately, not everyone has a fish to live in, so we have to find other ways to survive. A few organisms, like the water bear, develop really high resistances to any climate, while other animals, such as the diving bell spider, turn to the water and create pockets of air around themselves so they can breathe. Even though not everyone can be as interesting as the tongue-eating isopod, we all learn to adapt to our environment. What is evolution? Evolution is the process through which different organisms change and adapt. This happens when the genetic code of an organism mutates. If that organism reproduces, there will be several offspring with that mutation, and the mutation continues to spread until most of the species has. Why do organisms evolve? They evolve to help themselves survive their environment, living conditions, and other organisms. Since everyone evolves, everyone has to keep evolving to counter each other's evolutions, creating a cycle of endless evolution. Even if there is only one species on Earth, it would still evolve because mutations are random and happen no matter what. Why are there so many different kinds of organisms if we all started from the same thing? I believe there are two reasons for this. The first is based off of what evolution is. It is random mutations that get passed down until most of the species has it. Since there can be multiple positive mutations, several mutations likely occurred and were passed down, creating a divide between the organisms that have one mutation and organisms with another. Eventually, the divides became so large that these organisms couldn't even reproduce with each other, resulting in different species. The other reason brings us back to the environment. Because there isn't enough space in a single area for every living thing, they had to branch out and go to other places. These places all have different environments, so each organism had to evolve differently to survive. How long does it take to evolve? It depends on the rate of reproduction and environmental factors. For example, bacteria can multiply very fast and can evolve very quickly, whereas a human only reproduces once or twice over the course of around 70 years, so they don't evolve as fast. However, Sometimes evolution goes into overdrive. For example, in industrial Britain, a type of moth had mostly white coloring until the soot started covering trees. White moths got eaten very fast, so the dark moths survived and reproduced, making the species evolve to have dark colors. When anti-pollution laws got put into effect a few decades later, the trees were no longer dark, so the dark moths died off and the white prevailed again. This was a drastic example, but a good representation of how fast evolution can go. Why hasn't there been a perfect organism yet? Evolution hasn't made a perfect organism yet, because that's not what evolution does. Evolution merely helps organisms adapt to their environment. Earth is incredibly varied, so an adaptation an organism made to one environment would not work in another, and no organism would be perfect everywhere. For example, let's say there is a fish that can swim super fast and self-reproduce and survive off of water alone. Put that fish on land, and it's useless because it can't breathe. It can't breathe because it never needed to, and evolution doesn't factor in things that don't affect it.
The concept of cavitation bubbles. How do they work? You might think that bubbles are harmless, and for the most part, you would be right. However, cavitation bubbles are entirely different matter. Cavitation bubbles are created when an object underwater moves faster than the water can move out of the way. This creates a negative space, which is immediately filled in by the surrounding water, which causes an extremely powerful implosion. This implosion can reach temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. The mantis shrimp has evolved a club, which has a unique spring mechanism. When the mantis shrimp curls its club up, getting ready for a punch, it has a latch that locks into place and stores lots and lots of kinetic energy. When the latch is released, there's also a spring mechanism which helps propel the club even faster to speeds of up to 50 miles per hour. The club's unique appearance also gives the mantis shrimp its name because when its clubs are holstered, it looks like praying mantis claws. Cavitation bubbles also damage boat turbines because boat turbines are moving faster than the water can move out of the way to provide thrust for boats. When the cavitation bubbles implode, they permanently damage the turbines. When cavitation bubbles occur in open water, and not particularly near any surface, they collapse on all sides. However, when cavitation bubbles occur on a surface, example, a boat turbine, they collapse inward in a tornado shape at the top, spiraling down through the bubble until they hit the surface, causing irreparable damage to whatever surface the cavitation bubble occurs on.